Mine is the only voice you
What
hear.
have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cults to Consciousness. My name is Shalise Ansola, your host, and today we are doing a follow-up, but don't worry if you haven't seen the previous episode, stick around. You can go back and get more details later. Today we are talking about the troubled teen industry, specifically this wilderness camp where our guest today was forced to go there and hike and on barely any calories in the Utah winter mountains for 13 weeks. And how these troubled teen industries are making billions of dollars, really just exploiting and taking advantage of desperate parents. So thanks for joining us back again, Alexandra, with Trail Seasoning.
Thank you so much for having me. Is this the part where I do the intro?
Yeah, so I'll just give everyone a little update of what we've been talking about already. So in our previous interview, our long form interview, you gave us a full lowdown of your entire story as far as what landed you there, the mental health things that you were going through, and how this was really just a band-aid on a broken arm. And it really did nothing but make symptoms worse, especially once you left the group and started realizing how harmful it was through TikTok videos. And then you eventually started your own channel. So I wanted I already kind of gave a nutshell version, but I want to hear from you sort of the main points as to what landed us here. And then we'll talk about some of the more difficult parts of your journey in wilderness camp, how you were able to really realize what was going on in your college years, how it affected you, and better alternatives for parents who are seeking ways to help their quote troubled teens. So give you the floor.
So I was born and raised in Kentucky. All the way up to being sent, I was a straight A student. I was struggling with my mental health, especially through high school. It got worse. I became very shy, and like anxious. My senior year, my parents, without consulting my psychiatrist or my therapist, hired someone called an educational consultant. And she, without ever having met me, decided that the only course of action was for my parents to pay tens of thousands of dollars to pay people to take me from Kentucky to Utah and then go to a wilderness camp in Utah. And then after the wilderness camp, again, with her never having spoken to me, decided that I needed to do another 6 to 9 months in a residential treatment center, also in Utah.
Mm-hmm. Something that we touched on a little bit, but I think is important to start this live with is the actual money that's being passed around. You just mentioned tens of thousands of dollars. And let's talk about how these educational, what'd you call it? Consultants
Consultants.
are getting bonus checks and how everyone is kind of connected and just how it's a huge for-profit industry.
It's specifically a huge for-profit industry for Utah. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of these programs out there, almost all in America, and many of them, if not most of them, exist in Utah. In Utah, it brings in over $1 billion every single year. Yeah. In terms of money, and this was in 2019 dollars, so I have no doubt with inflation and everything, those prices have skyrocketed. But my wilderness program was $625 every single day for me to eat dehydrated beans and rice and sleep in a sleeping bag, plus I think a $4,000 signing bonus for my parents to pay. And my second program was, I believe, 10 figures a month. Not 10 figures. 5 figures a month. Thinking $10,000 plus also 5 figures.
Yeah. And I mean, if we do the math, so have you ever done the math of how much they actually paid for that 9 months?
I've certainly calculated it. It's still, I've heard different quotes for exactly how much my second program was. 5 figures could be anywhere from 10,000 to 99,000. But I was in wilderness for 91 days, so 625 times 91 plus 3,000, 4,000. I can't do
I'm
that
not
math in
very
my
good at
head, but I
math.
know I'm sure someone out there can.
Someone leave it in the chat for us and pull out a calculator.
Well, it was almost
Uh,
100 days, so 625, and you add on 2 zeros, so
okay.
62,000-ish for me to live in the woods.
to not live in the woods, to survive in the woods. Because I tried to make it very clear in our full interview how cold Utah is in the winter, and the fact that you're doing this in the dead of winter in the snow, hiking with only a tent, it just blows my mind that you actually were able to endure that.
It blows my mind sometimes. I Gosh, I don't even know. I know how I survived that, and I know we discussed in the full episode about how most staff only worked there for 1 year because it was so physically and mentally difficult for these
Mm-hmm.
staff, and staff who were there multiple years ended up having chronic health problems like circulation issues, like permanently losing feeling in their fingers and toes because the winters are so harsh, and it's not safe. It's not safe for you to be out there.
Mm-mm. Not especially so you are teens who are doing your best. You have some underlying condition that brought you there, whether it be physical or mental or whatever they deemed you needed to be there, whatever they deemed necessary for you to be there for. And now you're being put through these strenuous conditions that are supposed to, quote, fix you. But really, it's just making it worse. You're just learning how to be compliant. You're learning how to be submissive. You're learning how to question yourself and just follow rules, which also are going to set you up for failure.
Mhm.
And physically, you're just trying to survive. You talked about breakfast being dry oats in the morning, which is insane to me. And one thing, too, that I wanted to mention, because you were talking about the staff, we did have a people comment that they were staff and they can corroborate everything that you were saying, and that's one of the reasons they left, because they couldn't ethically stand by all of the things that they were doing to these teenagers. And what was the other thing? A lot of people were saying they're in Utah because they have the most lax rules or laws around regulations for these camps. And what was the other thing? There was one more. I'll remember it later. But were you able to look through any of the comments and anything that
I did look
stood
through
out
the
to you?
comments. There were just a lot of very supportive ones, and I appreciated them. I do think it's fascinating when I get past staff because a couple of them are very kind and supportive, and a lot of them, quite frankly, frighten me. I got a comment this past week from a staff that was like, "Oh, well, I taught at these programs and like we had a little girl with Lyme disease and we had to physically carry her because she was too weak to move." But it's such like a powerful bonding experience for our whole group. And I was like, "You are describing a child who's become so ill that you have to carry them and you think that's a positive experience."
Right.
I think it shows the lengths these programs go to brainwash participants, both staff and children, and also glorify and make you very comfortable with the idea of people in distress and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was a moment the year after I got out where my best friend was having a panic attack and sitting on the ground, hyperventilating and crying. And I was just standing above him and looking at him completely emotionless because I'd been so trained to see distress as not even a normal, but a negative thing, as a thing that's like, well, it's your fault if you're showing emotions because that means that you're
Yeah.
not strong. And like, what a terrifying thing to think. Which relates to the story about the little girl with Lyme disease. Like, what about that story of a little child being too sick to move is good, is
Mm-hmm.
inspiring.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
terrifying. I want to say real quick to anyone who's watching live, thank you for being here. Please drop your comments in the chat below. Jonathan will be starring those. We'll be doing some questions in maybe 5 or so minutes.
Mhm.
But first, we wanted to get into more of these conditions that you had to face so people truly understand this isn't just a fun camp out for a weekend, which could totally be a bonding experience, positive thing out in nature, but you were truly surviving this for 13 weeks straight in the Utah mountains. Oh, the other thing I remembered, the altitude thing, which I totally forgot to bring up because I grew up in Utah. I know that even when sports teams come and play in Utah, they have to train beforehand because of the thin air, the altitude in Utah. So even just hiking at those elevations can be extremely taxing on the body.
I didn't even think about that. But oh my gosh. Oh my yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. Because we were in the Uinta Mountains. It wasn't just Utah, which is already a high desert. We were
Yeah.
oh my goodness. Yeah, there was a kid in our group who had asthma and would collapse on hikes because the air was so thin.
Jeez. So that's just another thing to think about. So one of the main stories that you wanted to talk about had to do with because of these harsh conditions, hazardous conditions, you developed a medical condition that they then would photograph. So I'll let you tell that story.
Yes. So when you get into these programs, they always strip search. I won't say always, they almost always strip search you. And sometimes it involves a cavity search where you, as a kid, I, gosh, it was just so awful. I like in the span of 24 hours, I was kidnapped by strangers. I was transported across the country. I was told I would be somewhere for 8 to 10 weeks, which turned into 13 weeks. And then I was also strip searched. That's a lot to go through for anyone, but especially a child who 24 hours previously had no idea any of this was going to happen.
Well, not only
So,
that, and we won't get into this because I know it's also hard to talk about, but what kind of triggered your mental health was SA. And so now you're being stripped down and cavity searched. I mean, just that alone is so violating, but you've already been violated to the point of your mental health deteriorating, which is what got you sent here in the first place. Guys, my words today, I'm so sorry. My brain, I recorded an interview earlier. I don't know if it's the pregnancy or what, but I'm sorry my words are coming out funny. But that's not funny. So what we were just talking about, that's really horrible for someone to go through, especially a teenager.
yeah, they certainly were not trauma informed in the way that you'd want an ostensibly therapeutic program to be. Or the whole experience
Yeah.
I spoke about in our episode with there was a male staff, and I and some of the other kids were like, "Hey, could the male staff please not sleep in the tent?" Because many of us, if not all of us, have experienced sexual abuse and are uncomfortable with that. And the female staff were like, "Well, like it'd be really good for your therapeutic journey if you slept next to a man." But
It
that
just
wasn't,
that
yeah.
boils my blood to think. And then you're talking about how these staff members are sometimes only a few years older than you. They're not trained, they're just there to manage these teens.
Yeah, if staff were, 21, 22, 23, I got a DM from a staff from my program who said I was so lucky because usually the cutoff is 21, but they let me work there at age 19 because I went there as a kid and I liked it so much. And I was,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But yes, the photographs. So I've never learned the medical term for this, but we were so cold for so long that we all got these itchy bumps on our butts. And they explained to us that the fat on our bodies was too cold, and these developed because of the cold. So we all got these really itchy bumps, and every week multiple staff would take us into a side tent and tell us to pull down our pants and pull up our underwear to a G-string, and then they would like look at our bottoms and write notes about it, and they would sometimes take photos. I don't know where those photos went. And to be clear, these staff were not medical professionals. These were not doctors or nurses who were taking these photos to I don't even know. I don't know what the point of taking the photos was. But they made it very clear they were taking photos and they were sending them to other people.
How are you feeling in that moment? Were you still pretty traumatized to the fact of this is very violating, or had you been desensitized enough to be like, yep, time to pull my pants down? Like, what's going through your mind?
We were desensitized. I don't know about we. I was desensitized by that point. I was just like, well, this is something that happens, I guess.
Your children doing this.
Yeah, and when you take a kid and put them in an environment where they're not allowed to be in contact with their family or friends or community, you can get them accustomed to almost anything. very
Well, not
quickly.
only that, they are actively censoring your letters, so you can't even tell your parents what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there was a month where I wasn't allowed to contact my parents at all because in my previous letter I'd spoken about, my hair freezing because it was so cold and washing my cup with dirt. And my therapist came to me and said that my letter was manipulative and that I wouldn't be allowed to contact my parents until I learned to be a less manipulative child.
Yeah, I think we have some people in the chat that are like, what the hell is going on? Someone said I'm a therapist and this is horrible. I agree. And I mean, there's so many things here because the parents don't really know what their kid is doing because you can't tell them and the program's not going to tell them. So in some ways it's like, do we blame the parents? But then also, yes, we should because maybe they should have looked into it more and maybe they shouldn't have just blindly trusted these educational people who are getting kickbacks from these. We're going to talk about the alternatives later. I guess I was just ranting a little bit because this is insane. But let's talk about any other thing that that we didn't mention in the first interview that you had to endure before we talk about how you were able to deconstruct from it.
I would say not only do the parents not know about what's going on, but the parents are actively told that any negative information that their child gives them is lying and it's manipulation and they should ignore it.
Yeah. We had someone comment, this is just a bad situation, it's not a cult. This right here, active information control, active censoring, active not protecting the child and doing the opposite, harming the child and telling the parent something different, that is very culty. Now, should we categorize the entire thing as a cult? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. But what we do on this channel is show the parallels, show the manipulation, the coercive control, the ways in which they brainwash people into compliance, and all of that is very much cult adjacent, if not culty.
Yes, to speak more to the cult aspect, it's the complete control of this environment. You can't contact your friends. You can't contact your community. You can sometimes contact your parents, but only when you're saying very specific things that the program lets you write. I had to earn the privilege to speak to my little brother in this first program. I wasn't allowed to speak to him for the first, I think, say like 2/3 of the time I was there. So there's complete control over your environment, there's complete control over your clothes. There's complete control over the information you're given and the information you're allowed to share. There's complete
Mm-hmm.
control over the way you speak. We had journals that were just legal pads, and they could look through our legal pads at any time, read our notes. So you were constantly being monitored, and there was no privacy, and you weren't allowed to leave.
Yeah. And the gain, right? Because usually cults have someone or something at the top that is collecting some sort of profit or benefit, which is usually money, power, sex. In this case, it was so much money just being funneled to this company.
And that's my other question. It's 625, well, it was $625 a day. Where was that money going? Because the college kids weren't getting paid $625 a day. My dehydrated beans and rice and sleeping bag were not costing $625 a day. Who's getting that money?
Mm-hmm. And it's not like it went to a doctor who was on site with you 24/7.
Nope, we did have a therapist come out once a week, and every other week we had a nurse or a nurse practitioner weigh us and ask if we had any medical concerns. That was the extent. So yeah, if it's not a cult, it's very much cult adjacent.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we have some questions and then we'll get back to the story here. Are these programs still operating the way they did when you were in them, or have the lawsuits and knowledge about trauma-informed care changed anything? That's a great question.
I can't know for sure 100% because I am not really in close contact with these programs or anyone who works there. I can say my assumption is that they were going to continue in a similar fashion until we have much, much more comprehensive federal and state legislation. Because what happens with these programs is they sometimes get sued and they sometimes eventually get shut down, but because there's no regulation. They'll just open again with the same staff under a different name. And they're going to keep doing that until last year there was zero federal legislation. There were zero requirements these programs had to follow with.
Do you
And
know
they're
what's
going to keep,
changed?
yeah. I believe it was in 2024, the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act, or SICA, which was really championed by Paris Hilton, was finally passed. And it's a good start, but it's a very basic level of like, well, kids can't be physically restrained unless it's necessary, or they can't be physically restrained longer than this amount of time. So it's a
Whoa.
start, and I was very happy, and it's important that this legislation is beginning to be passed, but we need much, much stronger guardrails to prevent this happening to other children. And honestly, to prevent parents from losing their money to these companies who are actively hurting and sometimes abusing and killing their children. Kids die in
Yeah.
these programs.
Oh my gosh. That's the thing, right? If we can't get these programs to be safer, let's get the word out to the parents that, hey, just don't send your kids there. It's not a good idea. It's not helping your child. They may come back and seem like they've changed, but they've just learned to be compliant and they're afraid.
Hmm. Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the aftermath then of when you were in college, because you mentioned in your first video that you were one of those kids who went back to a reunion. You filmed a testimonial of, no, I've changed. This was great for me. And then you realized it wasn't. So
Yes.
walk us through really that realization of knowing this wasn't good.
After This was my senior year. So I quote unquote graduated my second program August of 2020. So I was there for the pandemic. And I left, and the world had changed. And because I was a senior, most of my friends were away at college already. And I felt such a deep sense of shame about what had happened to me that I didn't talk about it. And I felt too ashamed to reach out to like the friends I'd made before this, which is intentional, which these programs very much intentionally do. I was brainwashed. And that entire year, I was back taking a gap year because college application season was when I was in wilderness therapy. And I was like, can I please apply to colleges? And they were like, no. That entire gap year I was home was difficult for me because I believed that I was better because I'd been told that I had improved and I'd gotten better. And at the same time, I felt so much fear and so much anger all the time. And I had no idea why. And that was scary for an 18-year-old to consciously think I am better. And then you're subconsciously lashing out at people and getting really angry and having these giant, terrifying panic attacks multiple times a week. And I was like, this can't be what better feels like. I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine about a year after I got out, where they said, hey, like, based on this model of what a cult is, these programs were cults. And I got so upset. I got so angry. I started crying and like screaming at them. And I was like, no, it's not. They're not cults. They helped me and I needed them. Which, like,
Ooh, classic response if you've been in a
yeah,
cult.
yeah. Like, if you
That's
weren't in
kind
a
of how
cult,
you know, right?
yeah, not a normal response to have if it wasn't a cult.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
hold on. I
yeah.
have to pause there because it's so important to talk about this. So, this happens all the time, especially when I talk about Mormonism because it seems very lovely and there are so many beautiful people in it and they're kind mostly. And it's just like, what do you mean it's a cult? It's not a cult, you crazy person. But if you look at the bite model, if you look at the methods of manipulation and all of that coercion, if you look at the history and how it's hidden from the members and just so many things that we don't have time to get into. But if you look at it and you realize it is a cult, it's really hard to swallow. And the number one thing that happens if you're realizing it for the first time is defensiveness because someone is not just saying you were in a cult in your mind, in your subconscious. They're saying you're stupid for believing in something, or I can't believe you fell for something like that. Or you're attacking my personality, because when you're in a cult, it becomes your identity. It's not just something that you went to or you were a part of. It was, no, this changed my life, or this is the most important thing to me, and you're attacking me personally. And so you can pretty much gauge if somebody is reacting in such a like insane way, it's because it's ringing true to them, and it's so hard for them to admit to any of that, because it would mean their entire world is about to crumble. If someone's not in a cult, if you're like, hey, that spin class is a little culty, like the things you guys are doing over, they'd be like, yeah, maybe, but whatever. Like, you're not gonna get ragey about that.
It absolutely, all of that. It was very difficult for me at first because then it also was a sense of, well, then I suffered for nothing.
Yeah.
If this was a cult or cult adjacent and it didn't help me and it actually harmed me, I lost out on the last year of my childhood and I lost really important relationships to me and I lost my perfect GPA and I lost all the friendships and relationships I had and I missed my graduation and I missed senior prom for nothing.
Yep. That's it. That's the moment, because you realize you've been suffering for no good reason. And that's another thing that's so hard to admit, which is why it's harder for the older generations, like my parents and their parents, to admit that something is wrong and off, rather than just pretend that everything's fine and go on in ignorant bliss, because it's easier to pretend that everything's fine than to dismantle your entire life and really take a look at everything that you've been through.
Absolutely. And I was very lucky that for me it wasn't my entire life. I was very
Yeah.
lucky that I was only in my second program for 6 months because I'd accumulated all the credits required to graduate high school in Utah. Many of the people I was there, the average stay at one of these residential programs is 1 to 4 years. A
It's
disproportionate
crazy.
number, I know, that's like all of high school, and a
Yeah.
disproportionate number of the kids I was with in both of my programs were either adoptees or they were in foster care. And for
Mm-hmm.
them, they were there for multiple years because there was nowhere else for them to go. And they wanted to stay because that was their stability and that was their family. And I can't imagine how much harder it would be to deconstruct that if
Yeah.
you're like, well, I don't like this was the family I had. These were the people I had. What do you mean they harmed me? What do you mean this wasn't
Yeah.
helpful?
Especially when it is, so in your case, it's not a church, but it's viewed as therapy. And so you're told the entire time you're there, this is for your own good. This is your therapy. This is going to make you better. And so I'm sure to completely reverse that in your brain and realize it was actually harmful must be so, so difficult to do. And before you answer that, let's go to some questions. Okay, wish I knew more back then. I'm so sorry for what happened to you and what happened to the kids in the program I worked in. Most of our kids were sent to us from the courts or foster care kids. Yeah, like that's what you were saying. And we mentioned this in your interview. In from an outsider's perspective, and you validated this too, Alexandra, most of the kids had a really rough home life where they were just struggling and they weren't getting the immediate care that they needed until they acted out enough for the parents to freak out and say, I'm just going to send you away because I can't deal with you anymore and I want someone else to fix you. Rather than tuning in at those early signs, the early red flags, your parents knew that you were self harming, your parents knew you had an eating disorder and didn't get you the care that you needed. They just sent you away. And so that's another thing that's so heartbreaking about these is they're not even necessary to begin with if you just pay attention to what's going on with your kid and try to help them before it gets out of hand.
Yeah. I A lot of the kids in my program, as you said, had difficult home lives, and a lot of them, like me, had experiences with their parents where from the beginning there was clearly something going on. A lot of the time it started with their parents abusing them or getting into really messy divorces or affairs, and the parents not getting the help they should have, the parents not getting the
Yeah.
therapy, the parents taking out their dysregulation onto their children who started acting out because children have very little control over their lives. And what they do a lot of the time is start acting out because they're distressed by something and they have no other way to put the negative emotions they're feeling, and they also are too young to know effective coping strategies, especially if they're from an unstable home life and nobody's ever showed them good coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I see my mom drinking, so I'm going to start drinking. I see
Mm-hmm.
my foster parent taking a bunch of pills, so I'm going to start taking the pills too.
Yeah, those are all great points. Let's see if we have more questions here. Have you heard of Project Patch in Idaho? It's a TTI program by the Seventh Day Adventist group. Ooh, we just covered
Oh,
SDAs, and I feel like that's a subgroup that we should get into. If anyone knows anyone speaking out about it, definitely let us know. Have you heard of that one?
no, that doesn't sound good though.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like the cult within a cult type of situation. Now, before you come at me about the SDAs, I know that there's a huge range of ways people practice it, just like Mormonism. But if you're interested in the more fundamentalist ways, we probably have a playlist on our channel that you could see some SDA interviews. So I'm imagining the fundamentalist strategies and theology coupled with troubled teen industry, which sounds like a recipe for disaster. I'll have to look into that. Okay, any other questions? Besides being kicked out of camp, were there any other consequences for the boy that essayed you? So this is before you got sent to wilderness camp. This was like a regular summer camp.
Nope. As far as I know, there weren't, and I didn't go back to the camp, and he was allowed to come back the next year because I wasn't there. Um, Even though they knew what he allegedly did, they were fine with it because I wasn't there.
That's frustrating. I don't have words for that. That's not okay. Okay, any other questions? 100% breaking free of those associations are one of the hardest parts of deconstructing. Yeah, let's get back to your deconstruction process. So your friend's like, that's a cult. You're like, you're lying. That no, 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 no. When did it start to sink in that maybe your friend was right?
Not for a while. I think you'd love this as an ex-Mormon, but I left that cult or cult adjacent place, and then I became Orthodox Jewish.
Interesting. We didn't talk about this.
Oh no, I thought about it after interview, and I was like, I think she would relate to this actually.
Yeah. Now, once again, I'm not saying all Orthodoxy Judaism is a cult. I am not saying that. I'm not saying that because that's the one we get emails about that one a lot. So, but we have gone into different Hasidic groups and ultra Orthodox groups. I'm sure, again, we have a big playlist on that if you're interested. So, tell me the level of extreme that you were within Orthodoxy.
Yes, so I grew up kind of observantly Jewish. I went to a lot of holiday synagogue services, all of that. And then really the summer after I was released from Utah, I started learning more about it, and I really think in my head it was my brain was looking for, again, rules and sort of a structure. Because I'm sure you know this and your listeners know this, but once you're in a cult, very easy to join another cult because you've been programmed to they're like, and in a way there is a sense of security. There is a sense of safety in that if I just follow all of these rules, then I am safe and I will get the approval and I'm doing the right thing. And I
Absolutely.
think that was the not consciously, but subconsciously it was in my head. So for 2 years, I wasn't specifically part of any like Hasidic, Chabad, anything sect of Judaism. I wore my uncle hated them. He called me my little house on the prairie dresses. I got a bunch of very long dresses. I usually wore like long sleeve shirts under my dresses, and then I wore leggings and stockings under my dress as well. So no one
Okay.
saw anything. I was
So
very,
you did go pretty extreme on
yeah,
that
I
end.
was extreme. I turned off all electronics from Friday night to Saturday night. Um, I went to services fairly regularly. I took Talmud study with a rabbi. I got pretty into it.
Okay. So I have to
Yeah.
ask because everyone has different experiences with those type of situations. Do you feel like this helped your mental health, or do you feel like it just further pushed your personality into a box that wasn't you?
I don't think it was me. I think it was part of my deconstructing process, and it gave me security when I needed it. I'm not Orthodox anymore. I have friends who are Orthodox, and it works for them, and I totally agree and respect that, but it was just not for me. And I think it was because I was so influenced by the places in Utah and by Mormonism and this idea that religiousness is goodness. And to be a good person and to be healthy, I should be religious.
Hmm. You kind of touched on this, but when someone tells you exactly how to live your life and all the rules that you have to follow, it really takes a lot of the pressure off of you. And I feel like being in a situation as a teen where you were told that you were inherently wrong or doing things wrong, I would imagine that you were probably just scared to make your own decisions. So going into a group that makes all the decisions for you feels like, okay, I can just relax because I know I'm doing everything
Yes.
right.
I know, it's like, phew, that's a load off. Yes, and I made a video about this. I'm trying to do things that scare me every day on social media, and a big one is not only posting like fact-based content and sharing my opinions and my life. And I've mentioned this in my videos, but I'm like, I'm so
Yeah.
afraid that I have the wrong opinions or I'm living my life wrong.
Hmm.
And like outside of harming people, there's really no way to live your life wrong.
Yeah.
But it's still very, and especially coming from, a very strict environment growing up where there were a lot of rules, to going to these places of total control where there were a lot of rules, to
Yeah.
Orthodox Judaism where there are a lot of rules, and some people who find comfort in that, absolutely. But this is the first time in my life I was like, "Oh, I can do anything, actually."
So you said you were
Yeah.
doing that for about 2 years, and then what made you realize that that also wasn't right for you?
I studied abroad at a very cool theater conservatory in London, and the rule for
So
that theater
awesome.
conservatory, I know. The rule for that theater conservatory is that you have to wear pants because we're doing acting, and you can't wear long skirts because you're also doing, like, dancing and sword and dagger combat, and that's, like, a safety risk. So I started wearing pants, and then I was living with these other students, and we were going out on the weekends to bars and clubs, and I was like, "Hmm, I like going out, and also pants are very convenient." And I
Yeah.
was so much happier, and I was like, "Hmm, I'm very happy, and I don't even have to be following all of these rules."
Yeah. That was a similar thing for me. So interesting. When I left
Really?
Mormonism, I went and studied abroad in London, and just being out of that environment where people are checking in on you, or why aren't you going to church, or why are you dressing that way, or working wherever you work. I was just always in this bubble of shame and guilt. And then when I went
Yes.
to London, I was like, I can just be whatever I want. I can dress however I want. I don't have to feel weird if I don't go to church. Maybe I won't because I'm in a new place and I want to travel. I want to go to France. I want to just exist. I want to take a nap, you know? Just getting
Yes.
out of that bubble and seeing the world is so helpful. If that's something that you can afford to do, I highly recommend it, because just taking yourself out of an environment, even if it's one state over, is going to change your perspective on things when you see how other people live and thrive.
Mhm.
And it just really helps get you out of that box, out of that tunnel vision.
Yes, the box of, like, "I'm in this place, so I have to act this way because I'm in this place." And then you leave the place and
Yes.
you're like, "Oh, I don't have to actually, and the world's not
Yeah.
ending because I'm not." Can I ask where you were
Yes.
in London?
I was in Islington is where we lived, but then we went to school on Bond Street, like right in the heart of London.
Oh.
It was a fashion design school.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was
That's
fun.
awesome. I don't know if you had this experience. I felt, like, physically lighter when I was in London. I felt
Yeah.
physically like the weight was lifted off me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I finally just allowed myself to rest a little bit and just have fun, because before that, my life was so regimented. And especially when you layer Mormonism on top of that, your days are scheduled. You got the extracurriculars, which I wouldn't trade. Like, I loved all the dancing and all the fun stuff, but it was very much like you don't make any choices because you already know the schedule and what you're supposed to do. And anyways, yeah, it was just nice to just relax and hang out with friends and I don't know, get lost in the tube station, go somewhere you've never been
The
before.
tube.
So when you
Yeah.
got back, is that when you realized, you know what? I want to keep wearing pants. I kind of want to just do whatever I'm going to do. What was your thought process like?
I think my thought process while I was in London was just, I like pants and I do like going out, and God hasn't killed me, which we don't really believe happens in Judaism. But I didn't feel any sort of cosmic or even interpersonal punishment. I was very, very happy. And that was the big shift for me. I was like, "Oh, I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I'm not doing anything I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Maybe there's something there."
that should be on a t-shirt. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I'm not doing anything I'm supposed to be doing, and maybe there's something there.
Good
Which
mantra.
is,
Yeah.
it's so true, because when you're in these groups, they tell you if you deviate, if you leave, you will fall into your own personal hell and everything will go
Yes.
wrong and you'll probably die. And so
Yes.
it's really scary to leave.
Yes. It was. Once you got there, it was like, "Oh, this is lovely." My deconstruction from the troubled teen industry began before that. I'd say about a year and a half after I left, so towards the winter, there was this trend of people posting like, "Oh, I smell smoke," and then it showed videos of them in wilderness therapy, or "My hands are cold," and it showed photos of them in wilderness therapy, and that was the first time I was like, maybe forcing children to live in the woods? Not good. Maybe bad, actually, perhaps. Maybe this was bad for me, and that's why I keep having PTSD symptoms about these which sounds so silly, right? Because it's like, oh, duh, duh. But I was like, I that was the first time I connected, I'm having all these nightmares and triggers and panic attacks from wilderness therapy. Maybe because wilderness therapy wasn't good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, like we already touched on a little bit, you were told that if you weren't getting better, you couldn't leave. And so they really drilled it into your brain that it was helping you. So it
Mhm,
would be hard to flip that switch. So that's so interesting. I love that TikTok helps people deconstruct from these hard things. It seems like this pandemic that happened in some ways really liberated a lot of people. It took them out of their
mm,
environments, like we were just talking about. It
mhm,
gave new perspectives. People started to be vulnerable online. That's when the big booms happen with the cult stuff, and all these documentaries are coming out because people are finally willing to confront those situations and willing to confront their feelings and the issues instead of just putting the band aid on the broken arm. So let's do a couple more questions and then we'll talk about the alternatives, what parents should be doing, or if there are safe programs out there that they can send their kids to if they're truly in a desperate situation.
mhm.
Did you have problems with people believing you after you got out? Yeah. Believing you about your experiences in wilderness. Yeah, even your parents, right? If they didn't really know, did you tell them what happened when you got home?
I've told them now.
Yeah.
It was just so weird. I got home and my parents and I were like, "Well, everything's fine. Good seeing you after 9 months." And then, of course, my parents stopped speaking to me for 2 years, and I had to pay for college myself. Oh, so my parents, they'd like to make it clear that they never legally disowned me. They only disowned me in the way that they stopped paying for everything for me after they'd guaranteed me and also my college, that they would pay for my college tuition. And it was because of this account. They found my account, which is why I was wearing the mask, and then they said, "You can either you have to delete your accounts because it's making us look bad." And I said, "I will delete my accounts if y'all go to therapy." And they said, "Nope, and also good luck paying for college." So, yeah, there were 2 years of us not speaking, and then we started speaking again, and I've shared a lot of what had happened, and they've come back and they said, "We're so sorry, we had no idea. We were told that bad things were going to happen to you if you were not sent. We were told that you were doing fine, and if you did complain or not even complain, if I told them what was happening, that I was lying and trying to manipulate them."
They were being brainwashed too.
Oh, yes. It's a big thing for a lot of these parents. companies will find specific pressure points. Like if your kid is doing drugs, they'll say, "Oh, your kid's gonna end up on the streets and like a heroin addict if you don't send them away." Or if you're worried about your kid being, sexually experimenting, which again, like is a normal thing for teenagers to do. But if you're afraid of that, they're like, "Oh yeah, they're gonna end up working on the streets if you don't send them away." Or, "Oh yeah, your kid's gonna end up dead because they're trying to commit um hurting themselves. They end up dead if you don't send them away." So these companies will find the pressure points for parents. And if you're a desperate parent and this company is saying, "We're gonna fix your child, and if you don't give us tens of thousands of dollars to fix your child, your kid's gonna die." I like,
That's
what else do
scary.
you do at that point? Do you think these people are
Yeah.
experts? So you want to follow
Yeah.
their advice, and you also, of course, want the best for your child.
Mm-hmm. What
Yeah.
about people online? So I think you had mentioned in your interview that when you saw accounts of other people, your first instinct was to be like, oh yeah, that's objectively bad, without really looking at your own. But did you have people online telling you that you were making things up?
All the time. I still get comments that are like, "Well, what's the real story?" And then I say, "I was struggling mentally." And they're like, "Well, what did you do? What did you do?" I'm like, like, not depression? I don't know. Like, it,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people online who are like, "Well, that wasn't that bad," or like, "Well, I went and it was great for me," or, "I'm lying about everything." Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I constantly have people that are like, "Well, you're not telling the truth."
So frustrating. Like, why would you make it up?
I
What do you
know.
benefit?
And it's also like it's a really I've been doing this for 4 years. Like it's a long con if this is
Yeah,
something I've made up. This is
exactly. Let's see if we have some more questions before we
Mhm.
move on. Oh my. I've watched for 3 years, never caught alive. Hey, thanks for coming. Thank you for everything you guys do. And to each person affected by these cults, much love, admiration, and well wishes. Thank you so much. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, we normally do lives on Sunday, but today it's
Oh,
Monday. Are you going to write a book? You really have a story to tell, and you tell it so well.
thank you. I'd like to write a book one day. One of
Yeah.
my friends, Kira, who was sent to the same wilderness program as I did 5 years before me, and also talks on TikTok and Instagram about her experiences, is writing a book. It's yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm excited. It's definitely something I would like to do one day.
You should. Did she go to a wilderness? You said the same wilderness camp?
Mhm. She went to
Okay.
the same one 5 years before me. She was 14 at the time.
14. Man, that's crazy. Wanted to hop in and say I love you and I'm so proud of you, friend. Aw. Do you know
Thank
Kyra?
you.
Kira?
Yes, she's the one I was talking about. She's
Oh
writing
my gosh,
a
just
book.
now? Oh my gosh.
Yes. Hi, Kira.
So cool. Kira, you should email us and come on the show.
Yes, she texted me during this and she said, "We have to start making a podcast."
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. Do you ever have trauma in nature because of the wilderness camp? I have it from being homeless, wondering if these places
Oh,
condition teens to hate nature as a byproduct of their actions. Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, that's a great question.
yeah, I do, unfortunately. As a kid, I grew up in Kentucky. Kentucky's just gorgeous. We have so many beautiful nature preserves, mountains. So I really did love nature as a kid. I loved bugs, I loved animals. I really enjoyed being outside. Um, I don't anymore. I get a real sense of agoraphobia, especially when I'm
Mm,
out in the woods. It's like, they're gonna get me. Who's they? I don't know. But yeah.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, do you think that's something that can be helped over time? Is that something that you want to change?
It is, and I work on it. Especially when I was in college, the place I graduated from, my college has, I think, like a 500 acre nature preserve. So I'd occasionally like take little walks around it, and, exposure therapy. So I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The good kind of exposure therapy.
Yes, not sleeping next to a full-grown man when you're 17, exposure therapy.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So, what are the alternatives? What are some things that parents can do instead of paying thousands of dollars to send their kid to something that is going to harm them?
Yeah, I'd say first of all, parents, you do not need an educational consultant. You should not hire an educational consultant. I don't. I, at the time, had, again, a therapist and a psychiatrist, and my parents did not discuss options with them, did not discuss treatment plans with them. When I came back from these programs, I contacted both my former therapist and my former psychiatrist, and they both said, we had no idea this was happening. We weren't informed, and we also would not have recommended this for you. So I'd say first line of defense is therapy and psychiatry for your kid. Mental health professionals who are able to help.
That's keyword. Mental health
Yes.
professionals, not your friend, not someone from church, not even a leader in your church, someone who is truly qualified and educated in the field of mental health is so important, especially because it's consistently developing and we're learning more about the brain and about child development. And there are so many things that a lot of us are trying to catch up on, even just disciplining children in a way that doesn't harm them or create long lasting negative effects. We're learning so much, so go to the professionals who have a degree in this, who understand it.
Absolutely. Professional really is the key word. As well as I know a lot of parents who send kids to these places are quite resistant to hearing this, but 9 times out of 10 with the kids I met in these programs, family therapy would have helped a lot. The parents or guardians or caregivers being in therapy, working on their own problems, having an impartial third party help things along would be very beneficial. That'd be like, I'd say the first line is therapy, psychiatry, medical professionals.
Mm-hmm.
I would also work with the school or wherever your child is. At the time I was sent away, I was working with the administration of my school to get together a 504 plan where I'd be able to, when I was having really intense anxiety, I'd be able to leave class and like just chill out for a little bit until my anxiety. Because what I was doing was getting counted absent from classes because I'd drop my stuff off and then I'd go to the bathroom and have a panic attack for the entire class. So work with the school, work within the community. I think that's a big thing is that these programs prey on parents who feel ashamed, afraid, and isolated. So you can absolutely talk to community members, talk to your friends, talk to family members nearby. And yeah, I don't have kids, but I imagine if you're really afraid of your child's decisions and or mental health, it's scary. And you can't go through this alone. And people who are only after your money are not going to be helpful and they're not going to have your best interests or your child's best interests at heart. But family
Yeah.
members, friends, church, synagogue, mosque members can be there for you. You're not the only parent who struggled raising a teenager. And I'd say a lot of people do have insight and can kind of diffuse the situation by going, "Oh, yeah, I've been through this too," or, "Oh, yeah, like, your kid's great aside from this, let's work on this," instead of going, "Your child is going to die if you don't give me $10,000 right now."
Mm-hmm.
And there are also a lot of support groups for the kids, there are after school programs, there are clubs, there's big sibling, little sibling, there's mentorship programs. I'm gonna plug a nonprofit I work with a lot. Unsilenced is a grassroots nonprofit that's entirely survivor, troubled teen industry survivor led, and it really focuses on pushing legislation to make these programs safer for children and also reform as well as support for survivors and parents. And they have an
Mm-hmm.
entire page that is called Community Based Options. And it has links and resources to dozens of different alternatives, group therapy, specific trauma therapies, um, job training in case you want your kid to get a part time job that are more effective, clinically based alternatives to institutionalizing your kid for months or years.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I feel like I should highlight the part about taking an internal look at how you are parenting. Maybe it's not intentional. Maybe you're not trying to harm your child. Maybe you're overwhelmed and not realizing what that effect is having on your kid. And I feel like just being willing to go, is there something that I could personally be doing better to create a safer environment, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally for my child, to help them thrive more? Is there a way that I could speak to my child better or in a more regulated way so that I'm not triggering something in them? I feel like so much could be avoided if there's some self-reflection. And so I guess I just wanted to highlight the family therapy part
Hmm.
with parents who are willing to look at themselves, because it's not going to do anything if you go to family therapy and you're like, nope, I'm not wrong though, they're just acting
Yeah.
out. It's not going to help. You have to be willing to look at yourself and your parenting techniques and see if there's anything that you can do instead of outsourcing your child to somebody first.
Absolutely. Look within before looking outside. Yeah.
Because that's probably where the symptoms are coming from. You have to figure out the underlying cause before you just try to mask all of the symptoms. So, like you were
Hmm.
saying before, there's usually a reason that the kid started acting out in the first place. So, figure out what that is, whether it's you or whether there was something that happened to them that they haven't spoken to you about, letting them know that you're a safe place, that you're not going to
Hmm.
get upset with them no matter what they've done, as long as they can come to you. I mean, there's so many different things, and I'm speaking like an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm just I'm doing my best. I'm just raising a toddler so far. So like I'm doing my best here. But from what I've gathered from other interviews and from other professionals, I feel like that's a really great place to start. Let's see if we have, oh, somewhat unrelated. Got to make sure they get a good therapist. Yes. I had so many misdiagnoses when I was a kid till they figured out I had autism when I moved to a different city. Oh, yeah, that's tricky. I mean, how do you really know who's going to be a good mental health professional? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also hard. It's definitely trial and error. I've had some mental health professionals with whom I disagreed and did not have a good experience with them. And I've had some really awesome ones. And it does take a little bit of shopping, I would say.
Hmm. I agree. I've been there too. Two
Yeah.
bad therapists back to back, and I was like, ah, I quit. This
Oh,
sucks.
yeah.
What is happening? Oh, man. Okay, any other questions before we go? Are you currently practicing any form of Judaism?
Yes, I don't really identify with a specific branch at the moment. I celebrate the holidays. I don't observe Shabbat or Shabbos as, I would say intensely, as strictly as I did. It still is a day of rest for me. Um, I I really love Judaism, and I do plan to have a lifelong relationship with it. So yes.
That's great. Okay, any other questions? Thank you so much for covering this topic, and thanks for all you do in general, Shalice. Oh, you're welcome. Break the silence. Yes, thank you so much, Gwen, for following along and being present. Any way that you guys interact with us helps the show. It's free and easy, and it just sends it to more people, so more people can become aware of these things, because that's truly what we're trying to do here is lift up these survivors' voices, spread the word, because I mean, just think of the impact if a friend comes to you and is like, oh my gosh, I'm about to send my teen to da 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 da. You could be like, hold on, look into this
Wait.
first. Hold on, you
Yeah.
gotta watch this video. No, plugging my channel. But just really encourage them to do a little bit more research before going to such extremes. I think so many children can be helped just by other people having the knowledge that this isn't the way to go.
Mhm.
Yes. Any other questions? Any other questions, comments? Jonathan? Is the baby trying to escape the room? I don't know if he's at the computer. Hey, Kawaruna, break the silence, break the cycle. We always love seeing your comments on our videos. You're the first one there, always. I don't know how you do it, but we love seeing your comments on all our videos. Any other comments before we sign off? Like and share. Yes, please like and share for the algorithm. Yeah, so tell people where they can find you and support you. You recently unmasked, which is a big
Mm,
deal. So your socials are gonna
s-
slightly shift into a more personal tone, which that's
Yeah.
exciting. So tell everyone where to find you.
It's exciting on TikTok. I'm just Trail Seasoning, TrailSeasoning. And on Instagram, I am trail.seasoning.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thanks for coming on and
Thank
sharing
you.
some more of your story with us. When we were interviewing, I was like, oh man, there's still so much to talk about.
No, I know. And it's
So,
so wonderful to talk to you. You have such like a warmth. I really
oh,
enjoy speaking to
good.
you.
Yeah, me too. We can do this more often, or if you have any news that pops up
Please.
around TTI, let me know. We love to do culty news segments and expose this as much as possible, especially because it's more of like a niche thing. Like we've already discussed, it's either a cult or cult adjacent, so it's not
Mhm.
really on people's radars as much. And I
Yeah.
think it's important because it's the kids who are ultimately suffering. And so if you have anything you want to talk about, definitely reach out and let us know. And for everyone watching, thanks for being here live. I love seeing how many people can join us. Let us know if Mondays are better for you. We've been trying to do it on Sundays, but it seems like we had a really great turnout today. So if Mondays are better, let us know in the comments. And if you want to support the channel, we have channel memberships now, which are YouTube specific perks, badges. Depending on the tier, you can get early access to videos. And let's see, I think it's like merch discounts, which is fun. And you can become a patron if you want to do that instead. Patreon.com/cults2consciousness. And I think that's it. Go check out Alexandra's full video on our channel. Easy to find under New This Week playlist if you haven't seen it already. We appreciate you being here. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Richard.